Hi friends, it's Miss Kristen here, and today we are going to do a flower dissection. So we are going to start, this is called an alstroemeria, and I was at Trader Joe's getting food yesterday, and I found these at the store. I was really surprised to find more flowers, but I grabbed them because these are great flower to be able to see its different parts. They're very clear. So we are going to talk all about this flower, and we're going to talk about all of its parts and how they reproduce. So we're going to start with just some basic things about this flower. So this is the alstroemeria. It's actually 6 years, named after Carl Linnaeus's friend. So Carl Linnaeus is a scientist that started to classify plants a long time ago, and his friend kind of found this flower and they named it after him. Another name is Peruvian lily, and they are found wild in South America, but you can find them at pretty much every grocery store here in America. So we're going to start with the different parts of the plant. So as you can see, as you all should know, this long piece is the stem. If this was a full plant, we would have some roots at the end, but we don't have the full plant because this is just cut flowers. So we just have the stem. Along the stem are all of its leaves, and the leaves are nice and green, and there's many of them because if this was in the soil, all of these leaves would be reaching towards the sun and trying to create chlorophyll in order to make food. So that's why the leaves are green. So we are going to take off the leaves, and we're going to kind of separate everything as we go here, just to get them kind of out of the way because they are pretty floppy. So I separated our leaves and our stem, and now our flowers. So there's a few things that I want to talk about when it comes to the flowers. This flower uses their reproduction is sexual reproduction. So this flower has 2 parts, the male and the female parts, but they don't reproduce themselves and create genetically identical plants with their own genes. There are multiple parts in here that we're going to get to in a second that will help aid in having non-identical parent plants. So it's 2 strains of genetics coming together to create a new plant. Here on our flower, we have a bud, which is a new flower that'll join. And I wanted to show you that because there are 2 things happening here. One on our bud, hopefully you can see, we can't see the petals just yet. And this part is called the sepal. And the sepal protects the flowers as it's growing and also the reproductive parts inside. So right now the sepal and the petals that are forming are very small. But actually these parts don't go away. In this flower, it might look like there are 6 petals here, but actually 3 are part of that sepal that protects the flowers, and 3 are petals. So if you notice, there are on the outside some quite large, what look like petals with kind of pointy tips here. And if you notice, they're very wide, and that is because they are actually protecting the petals that are inside of it. So if you kind of do that, you can kind of see how they're protecting. So those sepals continue to grow and protect the petals as the plant matures. So we're going to take off those sepals, and I just think they're really beautiful, and you can tell that they're different from the petals on this flower because they don't have the speckles. They're very solid, and they have that really nice tip, and you can see kind of where it curved over before it bloomed. So we're going to take our sepal pieces off to the side. And now we're going to focus on our petals. Look how beautiful those are. I love this plant because they have really cool speckles. My mom used to work at a florist, and she said that many florists would fill their bouquets with these just because of just how beautiful they are. And they kind of look like a lily. I believe that they're in that family. So now we have a clearer view. I'm going to move all of our things out of the way. and bring this whiteboard up so we're not, there we go, so we are not gonna be confused by everything. So we have our petals. Our petals are what attracts the bees and other pollinators to this flower. So I was doing some research specifically on our Peruvian friend here, and they said that the biggest pollinator for this guy is actually a bee, a native bee to South America. So the petals are there to be really beautiful and colorful, so that way it attracts those bees in order to have pollination. We are going to take off these really beautiful petals to get a better look at the reproductive parts. So if you ever wondered what these bits were, that's what they are. They're the reproductive parts. So we have 3 various looking objects here, but 2 of them are the same. So if you can see, these kind of look like a cattail, like if you were at a pond, these would be kind of sticking out from the water. This is the anther, and this is the filament, and together it makes up the stamen, which is the male part of the plant. This is also an anther. This little piece here is also an anther, and this is also a filament, which makes up a stamen. So these 2 parts are actually the same on this flower. What makes them different is this has a protective covering on top, and I'm still trying to figure out what that means. A couple of my resources say that it's just protecting the rest of the pollen, so that way eventually those kind of casings will fall off and reveal the same thing here. But I also noticed that when all of these things were together, the pollen, which is really on here, I'm going to post some really close-up zoomed in photos that I took on Miss Marina's microscope later, but that all of the pollen that's on here got onto these, which I think will also help in that spreading of the pollen. So as you can see, I've taken the liberty of removing all of the stamens and the petals. There are 6 in these flowers specifically. We have the 2 that do not have the covering on, and these little bits at the top are where the pollen is, and then these ones. And then what is left is with the female part. So this whole part here is called the pistil. And at the very top, which is really difficult to see, there are some grooves in the top, and that is the stigma, and that is this part that accepts the pollen. So if a bee is buzzing around, it would land on our friends here first because they are sticking up at the top, and then they would fly to a new plant, and they would carry the pollen that they have collected on their fur and on their legs, and they would deposit it here. Not really knowingly, they just kind of do it. And it would accept the pollen and then take it down the style, and it would create pollen tubes within this style here and take it all the way down to the ovary. So it's hard to see. So I am going to take off our style and our stigma, and I'm going to open up the ovary and show you what's inside because it's super cool. The ovary, and you can see the ovules inside, or the eggs. So after that pollen comes down the tubes through the style, it gets deposited in here, and that pollen fertilizes these eggs, and it'll create a seed. And I'll also have some close-up pictures of these as well. So I'm going to move this. So we'll go back to this friend. So like I said, buzz, 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 buzz. The bee will come, and it'll kind of hang out. It'll get the nectar that's deep down in here, and it will unknowingly gather up a bunch of pollen. See how I got a bunch of pollen on my finger just by touching it? So it will collect the pollen on its little sacs on its legs and on its fur, and then it'll buzz to a new flower, and then that, as they're rummaging around in here, that pollen will come off, and it'll get stuck here on the stigma right here, and then it'll go down deep, deep, deep inside our ovary. Oh, sorry if you can't even see that. So that was the dissection of the Alstomeria, but I rummaged around mine and Miss Marina's house and found some other plants that had flowers. And I wanted to show you because not all structures are the same as that Alstomeria. So if you look here, I bought this plant at Trader Joe's too. I believe it was called a wax plant, but you can kind of see the long tube sticking up would be that pistil, and then all the little round bits, again it's kind of hard for me to point at the same time, but if you can kind of see, let's see if I can, all of the round bits there are the anthers, and that's where all of this particular flower's pollen would be. And then we have a taller pistil. Here on this African violet, you see those yellow balls? That is where the pollen would be, and then there's a long tube which is kind of tricky to see just because of the color. It's the same color as the petals, but I'll post a picture of this too. And the long tube is that that pistil. And then this is a cactus that I can't remember the name of. Miss Marina just got it also at Trader Joe's. But hopefully, there we go. So if you can see also the yellow is where that pollen is, and those four kind of octopus arm looking things in the middle, that's that pistil. So that's where all the female parts are. So you can kind of see all flowers have different structures. They all compose of the same parts, but they just present themselves differently. So your task is, if you have any flowers at home, either that you've gotten at the store or you have in your yard or in your neighborhood, go up close and take a look. If you own them and your family says it's okay for you to try and dissect it, go ahead and take apart that plant, unplant it, see where the roots are, see the stem, see the leaves, see the flower, open up a flower, and check out the reproductive parts. On our Google Drive, there will be kind of a worksheet for you to fill out in order to kind of separate those different parts and draw a picture. Otherwise, draw a picture. Those are super handy to have, and it helps you understand your different plants. So I hope you enjoyed, and I can't wait to see what you do with this information.